In this video, I'm going to go over entering new business and submitting it for approval. We're going to start off by going to our client list. Once you're viewing the client profile, if you go to the top right, there's an Add NAF button. So in the primary investment objective, we did change this from the old account sheet, and now all of the collections are a little bit shorter in verbiage, and we actually separated a couple of them into separate categories. Once you choose the categories that you want, you click them and click the right arrow. Then you can, if you add one of the wrong ones, you can click the other arrow to remove it. If you did select other from the list, then you'll have to type something in here. Now the risk tolerance, I just want to repeat that this is the risk tolerance for this particular account and not the client's overall risk tolerance. You can see we've got employment status and information that's being pulled from the client profile. Once it's created, you can either click up here, there's a little pop-up, this does disappear, or if you had previously created a NAF, you can find them over here on the right side. And once we have a completed NAF, if you come up to the top right and click New Transaction, I'll first go over entering a broker-dealer transaction. This would be, as opposed to advisory. The asset name field is not perfect. It is a work in progress. If you search by the CUSIP or the ticker symbol, that is the best way to find the product that you're looking for. And the reason for that is if I just search American Funds real quick. You can see that the asset names are often abbreviated. And so if we wanted the Growth Fund of America, we actually searched Growth Fund of America, it's not going to find it just because this is the abbreviated name for it. So again, you can search just American Funds, or if you search by the ticker or the CUSIP, that will be the easiest way to find the asset. I'm going to select check for payment method, and then I want to go over how we attach a check and how we create a check record. So if you come down to the check section, click check enclosed. If the check already exists, you can click here to link it to the compliance approval. But generally speaking, it's not going to exist, so you can click here to create the new check. Right, and then you don't have to worry about the check forwarded to information and the carrier tracking number and stuff like that at this time. If you do have that information, you can always put it in, but sometimes that information needs to be updated later, so it just kind of depends on when you're entering the check information. And then you don't have to worry about linking the NAF right here, because we're actually creating this check record on the compliance approval. Click save, and now you can see the check record is linked. I'm going to save this. This takes us directly into the compliance approval. And we can see stuff like the status, has not been submitted for approval yet. It verifies that you're registered in the state. Come down to the check information section, you can see, here's the linked check record again. If you click that, you can go directly to the check record. I'll open that in a new tab real quick. You can see what that looks like. Close that. And it actually pulls the information, in here, so you don't have to click the check record. You can just see the overview of what's on the check record. And then because this was a broker-dealer, investment transaction, this is not an advisory transaction, so you can leave this section blank. And then once there is approval information, you'll see it down here, so don't worry about it at this time. Go back to the top. Now real quick, I want to mention, say you don't have all of the information necessary for this submission to go through, and you're still trying to get some of that information from a client, we do have the Save as Draft checkbox. And if this is checked, it actually removes the required fields, then it will let you save an incomplete page, and that way you can fill that information in later, and that way you don't have to wipe what information you have already entered. So for now, I'm just going to leave that unchecked. And we'll click Submit for approval. If you have any comments for the approver, you can type them here. And then at this time, when you actually submit for approval, it does not show the status as submitted until you refresh the page. So don't feel like, because there's no confirmation saying that it was successfully submitted, that it actually didn't go through. If you just refresh, it should change the status to submitted. So I went ahead and rejected that submission just to give you a demonstration of what it would look like. So here I have the email. You can actually see I got 2 emails. So this email is just saying, this is the OM number, here's a link to the OM, some information like the client name, company, a little bit about it. Then here are the comments from the approver of why it was rejected. You can actually click the link here to go directly to the compliance approval if you didn't have it pulled up anymore, say this was later in the day or another day. And you can review the information on the page, you can edit it and then resubmit it for approval. And then the other email is actually about the task that was created. So if you go to that link, it takes you to like the task page. Or if you go to your home page, you can see that there's a new task assigned. You can say the NAF trade has been rejected. So you can click directly into the OM from there, or you can go into the task from here as well. So I'll go back to the OM. And I'll submit it again for approval, and this time I'll show you what it looks like when the business is approved. And so we're back in my email. You can see here's the approval email. Just again, another overview of, oh, this was the OM, here's the client's name and everything. And then the comments here, if there are any. Oftentimes if it's approved, there aren't going to be any comments. You can actually go into the OM and review it again from there. Now for these, this is after approval when you would go in and update the sent to sponsor information. So if there's paperwork that was sent to sponsor or a check that was sent to the sponsor, this is the time to fill it in. So to do that, you actually do not want to edit the compliance approval directly. You can attempt to do that, but the account page is actually locked. So if we actually add this in and click save, let's see, we get an error saying that the record is locked. Cancel. Then come up to the top, there's a button that says update sent to sponsor information. How it was actually sent, if it was first class mail or fax, then just click save. And once you refresh the page, you can see that it updated the information on the compliance approval. Another thing that I want to mention, say that there is one NAF or one new account form, but then there are multiple transactions for that account, or say that multiple assets on one check. So in this example, we said that the check was for $10,000 and the transaction was for $10,000. But say this transaction was only $5,000 and there's a secondary transaction. You come up to the drop-down menu at the top right of the compliance approval and click Clone. This will duplicate everything on this page, and then we can come down and say transaction amount on this one, we'll reduce it to 5,000. And I also want to mention, because we've had problems in our old system where people would type K, like 5K. This is actually smart enough to figure out that, oh, that's supposed to be 5,000, and it'll automatically correct that. And then let's say this one was a different fund as well. So we'll select a different asset name. And come down and click save. You can see, we just created a brand new compliance approval. The number just iterated by 1, and everything is already filled out for you. Say this was an advisory transaction and you had a recurring fee set up and a initial fee, or same with the funding type. If the transaction was not a one-time or there's a one-time in addition to a recurring, all of that can be done with just by cloning and just changing the specific amounts that are different. So once it's cloned and everything's filled out properly, just come up and submit for approval. Unless there are additional compliance approvals that you need to fill out for if there are more than just 2 transactions. I want to quickly go over the differences between broker-dealer and advisory transactions. So I went back to the NAF, and just like before, you go up to the new transactions, click advisory this time. You'll see that this pop-up is actually a little different. Some of the information that was on the broker-dealer one is not here, and then there's some additional information added. So you can see that most of the stuff at the top is the same. Then we have the like advisory transaction information, and where it says fee type, you can choose based on whether it's a percentage or a fixed amount. Or say you're doing a transaction for yourself, you can actually select none because you're not going to charge yourself a fee, and that way it doesn't require any of the other fields. But if it is a percentage, you can actually just type the percentage here. And then if there's nothing used from the check, if there was a check, let's just say that there was in this example, if none of the fee came from that check, you'd still put 0 in the amount. And we can still calculate on our end what the actual fee was. So the percentage is all that you need to enter. You don't have to worry about entering what that calculated out to be. And then, just choose how, let's say there was like a big draft. And for frequency, just set that to whatever it is, say if it's quarterly. Now that we've entered some of the compliance approvals and stuff, you can go up to the top. You've got a link back to the client profile. And on the client profile, we'll have a list of checks for the client, a list of NAFs or no account forms. And we can actually click into that from the client profile. And then from there, we'll have a list of the different compliance approvals for that client. We can go into the submission section. You can see, here we've got a list of NAFs. It defaults to recently viewed. You can just click the drop down to change that, depending on what you're looking for. And that's the same for compliance approvals. Probably unlikely that you'll need to go in and view the whole list of checks, but that is available as well.